Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I had a great conversation today with an old friend of mine. His name is Andrew Tessman. He is a former federal prosecutor, now in private practice. He and I worked together at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority in Illinois, up in Chicago, many years ago, over 15 years ago. But we've kept in touch, and today we talked about his career, his passion, his purpose, and how he's brought those three together. Some of the really important takeaways that you're going to get to really dig into are that if you have a goal, sometimes the shortest path or the surest path is not a straight line. For Andrew, he had a vision of being a federal prosecutor, and he followed that dream. And even though he didn't get to it right away, he never quit. And ultimately, he achieved it and did some really wonderful things in that position. So please tune in and give a listen to the conversation that my old friend Andrew Tessman and I had. And please click subscribe, click like, share this podcast with a friend, and then tune in for the next episode. Thanks.
Andrew, it's great to see you, man. It's been
Hey,
so
Janae.
long.
How you doing, Janae?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. I saw that you left the federal prosecutor's office and are now in private practice, and that got me to scroll through your LinkedIn profile a little bit more closely. And there were two things that really struck me. Number one, I can't believe that it's been 15 years since we worked together.
I can't believe that either. That's insane.
And the second thing is that you are literally the quintessential example that I give to my kids. My kids are out of college and then a senior in college, sophomore in college, and a freshman in college. And I always tell them, listen, you know what? You don't have to hit a home run right after you graduate. Um, what you need to do, especially in the times that they're living in, is you got to figure out where you want to go and then, build a path to it. And it's not always linear. And I was looking at your resume and it's linear, but it's like, it's a great example of how to keep chipping away, chipping away, chipping away till you get what you want. So that's what I want to talk to you about.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
So you are you went to University of Illinois for law school, and when you were there, did you know that you wanted to do litigation? Like what when you went to law school, what was your mindset about your future?
I knew I wanted to do some form of public service, and I think I was really intent probably on being like a state level prosecutor. I didn't really have a good idea of what a federal prosecutor was until I did my clerkships later on. And once I figured that out, that was my goal, and I wanted to do that more than anything. I just thought the AUSA position was so cool, and I had to achieve it at some point in my career.
I think it's something that I meet law students all the time, and they tell me both federal clerkships, judicial clerkships, and becoming AUSAs are aspirations of theirs. But see that a lot of young people, they get disheartened if they don't
Mhm.
get it, right out of the box. So they're graduating law school and they're applying and they don't get it, and they're like, oh, well, I guess that wasn't for me. For you, you graduated from University of Illinois Law School, and where's the first place you landed?
I landed in the Legislative Reference Bureau. So going back, it was 2008, and the economy was crashing. I was never really interested in going like the big law route, like a lot of my friends in law school were. I really wanted to do public service early in my career. Unfortunately, for a lot of my friends, their offers got rescinded, so it was a rough time for everybody. I had done in my third year of law school, I had done a externship with an agency in the state capitol called the Legislative Reference Bureau. And that led to my first job, which was consulting members of the General Assembly in Illinois on legislation, writing it so it like fits into the code. Very interesting, very challenging job. Really enjoyed it. It didn't pay very much. What I was really looking to do at that time was get a federal clerkship. I knew that was something I wanted to do because I had done another externship in law school for a federal judge, and I just thought it was so much fun to be on the inside and work very closely with a federal judge. So it was something I really wanted to do. So I kept kind of working towards that goal.
And how long were you at the Legislative Reference Bureau?
I think I was there probably like a year and a half before I joined up with you at ICEJA in Chicago.
That's when you hit the big bucks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, you and I worked together for maybe a year, a little bit more than a year. Um, when you moved over here, now I remember this. You and I talked, and you had told me, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had told me that, look, I've got a potential federal clerkship in the hopper, but
Mhm.
I'm here and I'm going to do this, and if that comes through, then that's where I'm going to go. Am I remembering it correctly?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that was so long ago now. It's all like kind of just coming back to me now. But yeah, actually, the federal judge that I ended up clerking for, I had an interview with him, and I was one of two candidates that he liked. And unfortunately, at that time, he picked the other guy, and the other guy really didn't work out for him. So, like after 6 months, the federal judge went his separate ways with that law clerk, and that opened up the spot for me. And then he called me and wanted me to join up with him.
So you're very nimble about your options, and you kept doors open, and you
Mhm.
didn't make yourself feel like, well, I closed that door, so and walked through this one, so I've got to stay with this. You kept your options open.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of have to do that early in your career, especially when you're kind of aiming for something that's kind of far out and you're not you don't quite have the qualifications for it yet, and you just need to invest that time in working your way to get there, and definitely keeping an open mind and keeping your options open. And when someone offers you a job in a different part of the state, you have to seriously consider that and just not write it off right away. Because when I was with ICEJA with you, Janaid, I think you remember my clerkship offer was in the southern part of the state, and so I had just moved my family to Chicago, where a lot of my extended family was, and then I 6 months later, I was on my way back down to Southern Illinois for that clerkship.
Yep, and that's the other thing that I wanted to make sure we highlighted is that you kept your options open, and you were flexible. I remember, were you down in like the southern tip of Illinois, or was that closer to St. Louis? I don't remember. I kind of, the only thing I remember when you told me where you were gonna get your clerkship, I chuckled. I said, I've lived in Illinois my whole life. Where the heck is that?
Yeah, I remember your parting gift to me was a camouflage hat because I was going so far south that you probably thought he's gonna have to be a hunter down there, so I'm gonna get him a camouflage hat. But yeah, it was SIU Carbondale, sort of in that area. So pretty far south, not all the way down to the bottom tip, but it's definitely directly east of St. Louis, but
Okay.
pretty far east.
Okay, got you. I will tell you that since giving you the camouflage hat, and if I remember, it was an Illini
Mhm.
camouflage hat, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's coming back to me now. I've actually become less northern centric. After you left ICEJA, one of the things that Jack Catrone, our executive director at the time, had me do was go down and testify in Springfield a couple times. And
Okay.
when I was down there the first time, I was literally testifying for ICEJA in place of Jack. And I tried to ingratiate myself with the legislators, and I said, you know, this is my first time in Southern Illinois. And I got a big smackdown because they said, well, Mr. Fee, you're in Central Illinois.
Yeah,
Southern Illinois is further south.
that's true. Yeah. So I lived in Springfield as well. So I've lived in the northern, I've lived in the central, I've lived in the southern. So I've been all over the state.
So you were down in Southern Illinois, near about St. Louis, about an hour east of that, and
Mhm.
you did a federal clerkship there. And then from there, you actually, when you finished that clerkship, you moved out west.
Well, not quite. So I was with a federal magistrate judge at first in that southern Illinois district, and then what happened was a new federal judge, Nancy Rosenstengel, got nominated by Barack Obama. And I knew Nancy because she was the current clerk of the court in the Southern District. And I applied to become her first law clerk, and I was accepted, and I worked for her over in East St. Louis. So it's just St. Louis on the other side of the border, basically. And I worked for her for about, I want to say like 6 months before I found my first law firm job. By that point, I knew I wanted to go to I wanted to go the DOJ route. I knew I wanted to be a federal prosecutor, and I was applying, like you said earlier in the show, I was applying everywhere to try to get that. And I was having some success getting interviews, but I would never quite clinch the job offer. So I interviewed Central Illinois and Southern Illinois, Eastern and Western Missouri, some other places for AUSA spots, and I was rejected. I didn't get it. So at that point, I thought I needed more litigation experience. So that's when I decided to join the law firm in St. Louis. So I joined Greensfelder, Hemker and Gale in St. Louis, and I was there for a little bit over 2 years before I moved out to California.
Okay, so you were there, and then you were in private practice in St. Louis, and then you moved out to California. So what took you from St. Louis to California then?
Yeah, so I was getting a little frustrated with the law firm just because I wasn't getting the trial experience that I wanted. Had a bunch of cases that we would work up for a trial and then they would just settle at the last minute. I was getting pretty frustrated with that because I really wanted to be in court. I really wanted to do trials. And I was at that time applying for those AUSA positions and not getting them. So at that point, I just decided to try something different. I thought, well, I saw a lot of positions were like open in these districts in California, AUSA positions. So I thought, well, maybe I could just reposition myself in California, and I would have better success getting one of those AUSA positions out there. So that was really like the driving force to go out to California. What ended up happening was I got another federal clerkship out in California, working for a magistrate judge. Worked for a magistrate judge for a couple years out there. At that point, it was 2018, and Trump had been elected president, and Jeff Sessions was the attorney general, and he had opened up all these AUSA positions across the country. And by that time, I'd figured out that California really wasn't the place for my family, just because the air quality out there really wasn't good. And I just remember a lot of days where my children couldn't even go outside and play just because it was so polluted out there. So I was like, well, I need to get back east, and all these AUSA positions are open now. So I'm just going to take a stab. And I just basically applied everywhere east of the Mississippi, and I got a lot of interviews. I was doing a lot of flying out of California to all these different places, and I was interviewing maybe in like 10 different districts. And finally, in Charleston, West Virginia, they offered me the exact role that I wanted to do, which I was going to be able to prosecute white collar crime from the very beginning. And I thought this is exactly what I want. I don't really have a connection to Charleston, West Virginia, but I liked that it was kind of like a low cost of living, and there was like a good outdoor hiking stuff for my family to do. So I just, took the chance and moved my family from California to West Virginia, and I finally had the position that I've been aiming for a long
So,
time.
what year was that you started as an AUSA?
I started in January of 2019 as a AUSA.
Okay, so it took you, I think you graduated law school in what, '08.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean like 11 years. So,
Hmm.
you had this vision in your mind that you wanted to do public service, and yeah, after like what, like 4 years of practicing law, being a clerk, you kind of set your sights on being an assistant U.S. attorney. So it took another 7 years after
It
that
did.
to land it.
Yeah, it took a lot of interviews and a lot of getting very close, but not quite over the edge, and finally just working my way into it.
So once you got to West Virginia and you got into the AUSA position, how was it?
Yeah, it was it was a strange time in the government, and we had a U.S. attorney who was appointed by Trump, but he had never been an AUSA before, and he was just kind of like a politician basically. So he didn't really understand the role of the office too well, and so he would interject his thoughts and override, people who had been there for 20 years. So when I first got there, the first couple of years were sort of chaotic. I just managed to like kind of keep my head down and focused on my own work, which was the only thing I could really control. And I decided like I'm gonna do this. If I'm gonna do this job, I'm gonna do it the exact right way. I'm not gonna let anyone pressure me into doing anything the wrong way. I'm just gonna, you know, look at my cases, do them the right way, and then I started getting the trial experience that I'd been coveting, and started learning a lot about the areas that I was interested, which were white collar and national security law, and I got to do a lot of really cool cases while I was there.
That's awesome. And I saw on LinkedIn that did you spend a certain amount of your tenure as an AUSA uh, like sort of like on loan to Washington, D.C.?
I did, yeah. So after I had two pretty big white collar trials in West Virginia, and that was basically in 2021. I think December of 2021, we did this huge $4.3 million fraud scheme that went to trial, and it was against one of like the most renowned attorneys in the district, and we convicted the defendant on every single count. So it was a really cool case, a really cool result. So I kind of like lifted up my reputation in the office a lot. And basically, what had happened, January 6th, 2021, there was a riot at the Capitol. Everyone knows about it. Uh, Almost immediately there was a call out for prosecutors around the country to come help out because we had like thousands of crimes committed on the same on one day within a few hours, and basically the DC U.S. Attorney's Office didn't have the manpower to handle all the cases, so they were seeking help from around the country. And I had actually applied in 2021. My office didn't let me do it at that time, but in 2022, we had a new U.S. attorney, and I asked him if I could do it, and he said, "Yes, go ahead and apply. You have my blessing." Um, I interviewed with the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. They wanted to bring me on, so in February of 2022, I started with the DC U.S. Attorney's Office, doing exclusively capital riot cases.
So you were there until you left to go back into private practice?
Yes, I was there full time, like 2022 to 2023. At that time, I had gotten a little bit worn out because the detail was remote. So I would only go out to DC when I had hearings or meetings, trials. The flights from West Virginia and back were very early and very late, so I was getting pretty exhausted by the end of 1 year. So I had come back to West Virginia, but I still had all these DC cases where people had agreed to plea agreements and needed to be sentenced. So even when I was back in West Virginia full time, it was like I had a second full time job where I had to travel back out to DC to do all these plea hearings and sentencings. So I felt like I was doing two AUSA jobs for about a year. And after about a year of that, I was like, well, I'm doing all this work for two districts. I might as well just go back to DC. So I went back in 2023 or 2024. I went back and I was doing exclusively capital riot cases again. A little bit different scenario. I was on this team of basically, it was called the sentencing team. So we would review every single sentencing memo in a capital riot case and to ensure consistency and quality. So I was able to do a lot more of the detail remotely from West Virginia. I still managed to do a couple of trials at the very end. I had two back-to-back trials against very violent rioters in October and November, and got convictions on both of those cases. And at that point, in November of 2024, um, Trump had gotten reelected for the second time, and we didn't know what was going to happen with all these cases. I was still on the detail in 2025 when he took office, and then I was there when he issued all the pardons. And those two trials that I mentioned from October and November, we had convicted those violent rioters, and they actually their cases were dismissed before they could be sentenced. And so I went from like basically what was like the height, I felt like the height of my legal career to basically the lowest point of my legal career very fast.
I
And
mean, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask you this, but I mean, for somebody who goes into law to, work in the public interest, which you did, and I know we talked about that kind of stuff when we worked together. I spent most of my career in the public interest area also. What does that do to your mindset?
yeah, it was traumatic. That's the only way I can describe it to you. I gotten very close with some of the officers, including Aquilino Gonell, who was one of the more like high profile officers from January 6th, and he had been all over the Capitol that day, just defending, basically risking his life. He got injured, had to retire from the Capitol Police due to his injuries, and he was a witness in a few of my cases, and I'd gotten to know him very well. So he was a victim in one of those trials. Um, yeah, he was going to testify in one of those, and he was about to give a victim impact statement in one of the sentencings that was scheduled right after January 20th. And so when the pardons came down that night, I had to call him and tell him basically that his country had betrayed him, and that was the only way I knew how to say it to him. Like, and that was the truth. And it was just crushing. Like it was, like I said, it was the hardest thing I had to do in my legal career. Um, and it just kind of, it changed my views about DOJ. It changed my outlook about my legal career. At that point, I knew like my days with DOJ were probably numbered, and I needed to move on.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that's like. I have one other friend. I didn't realize that you were part of the J6 team. How big was that team in DC that prosecuted?
I think over the life of the prosecution, we had maybe 200 attorneys on there.
So pretty
Uh,
big.
yeah, I think when I left we still had about 50 to 90 attorneys somewhere in there.
Yeah, a friend of mine was a prosecutor in Suffolk County, Boston,
Okay,
and then she moved out to DC to work on those cases as well, and she recently left as well.
okay, I probably know her.
Oh, I'll tell you about her offline.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so you were at the U.S. Attorney's Office. You kind of culminated with the J6 cases. But tell me a little bit about your favorite cases that were not related to the insurrection. I saw in some of the media for some of your cases that you had done some healthcare fraud, it looked like.
Yeah, actually, when I got back from DC, the first thing I did was I jumped on a trial of a doctor in West Virginia who was alleged to have been illegally distributing narcotics, and so at that point I had built up a substantial trial experience. So the office in West Virginia was basically just wanting to put me on any trial they could put me on. So I got on that one, and we convicted him at trial of illegal distributing narcotics. Very interesting case. He was in a small area of West Virginia, and basically he was, it's just as it goes. He was acting more as a drug dealer than he was an actual physician, and we were able to prove that he was illegally distributing after a hard fought trial. But that was
And
a great case. But one other one I would mention is so opioids are obviously a huge problem in West Virginia, more so than other places, I think. So early on in my white collar days, there was an individual who was basically just selling stuff like crazy on eBay, and it was just this private individual um, that came to the attention of authorities because they had arrested drug addicts stealing brand new items from retail stores in West Virginia. And when they interviewed these people, they had informed the police that they were selling them to this one individual who would turn around and resell these brand new items on eBay and make a huge profit. So basically, he had a group of like over 20 people going in the stores, and they would come out and they would meet with our guy, the defendant, right away to sell them these items for basically like a bare minimum amount of cash that would just feed their heroin habits. And so they would get just enough cash to go buy heroin, and they would keep doing it for him. And this guy would turn around and sell these items for like four times for what he bought them on eBay. And we're talking about like all kinds of things. But there was one drug addict that was called the Dyson Bandit because he would go into retail stores and he would walk out of the stores with two Dyson vacuums in his hand, and they couldn't stop him. And he would just go sell those vacuums to um, the defendant, and he would sell them on eBay. So I I was assigned this case, and I charged it in a very creative way because typically that kind of thing is like a state level crime, and so I had to think of a federal charging theory, and what we came up with was a conspiracy to commit promotional money laundering, and basically we were able to prove that at trial, and we secured a conviction, and he was sentenced to about 8 years in prison after that. So, pretty interesting case.
so the Dyson Bandit, you said he was able to walk out of the store with the two under his arm. Why was he able to walk out? Is that part of that criminal justice reform type of stuff where they were not going after people for a certain threshold of shoplifting?
I think it was just like they would get these items, and then they were experienced shoplifters, so like they knew where the security was, and they knew they didn't really care if they got on the video camera. They were just trying to get their score of cash so they could go feed their habits. And we heard a lot of stories about people running out of the store with these big items and jumping into like a waiting car, and then they would speed off, and then they would go meet with this guy to sell them and get the cash. So
Okay,
a
so it wasn't like the narratives that we read about that, oh, the stores are just
lot,
letting them walk out.
no, it wasn't like a San Francisco type of thing.
Okay.
Uh, it was just more they were sly about how they did it because they had done it so much.
Got it. Got it. So I have not tried a case in many years. I'm as an administrative law judge now. I have people appear before me in nursing home abuse, neglect, other regulatory violation cases. They're good lawyers on the government side, good lawyers on the nursing home side, and the vast majority of those cases settle before
Mhm.
they go to a hearing. But when they do go to a hearing, it's really exciting to see two good lawyers go at it.
Sure.
And
Yep.
I think that it would be helpful if you could talk about what you have learned in your years of litigating cases and maybe even in the days when you were a law clerk watching from the bench as lawyers, argued cases. What is it that makes for a good trial lawyer?
I think it's the ability to take what is usually just a lot of information and a lot of complicated information and distill it down into something that a court can understand. Even further, when you're in front of a jury, you have to really, simplify your message, and you have to put it in words where people can understand. And I find like judges a lot of times, and recently I've been appearing in front of state court judges, and a lot of times we get into that hearing, and the judges are not prepared. So like you better be prepared to inform that judge in that hearing about what's going on. You better be able to basically just distill complicated information and make it so it's clear to the judge or to the jury or who's ever listening. I think that's the most important thing is clarity and the ability to simplify your message.
And when you say clarity and simplify your message, when you have these complex white collar criminal cases, there's a
Mhm.
lot of probably documentary evidence. There's probably testimony and I don't know, maybe wiretaps, things like that. Uh, what I find really frustrating as an ALJ is when otherwise really good lawyers will just start introducing evidence through testimony and documents, and it's literally without a narrative.
Mhm.
And I end up with you know a record that I now have to go through and make sense of. And
Mhm.
then you get the really good lawyers who bring on, maybe they'll bring on a victim who just kind of sets up the stage for what
Sure.
happened
Yeah.
and then introduces some medical records that kind of explain
Mhm.
what that victim talked about and then call another witness and it's literally by the end of the case you have been told a story
Mhm.
and it's really impressive because that lawyer managed the information, whereas other lawyers just kind of throw everything at the wall and
Yeah.
expect the trier of fact to figure it out.
Yeah, as lawyers, as good communicators, and when you're trying to convince people to do what you want them to do, it's so important just to put complicated things into plain language that people can understand, and it's also important to to know your case to the point where you know like what all your most important evidence is, and so you can cite to it so that you can cite that to the judge, and the judge knows where to look. I know, and when going back to that money laundering case where we convicted the guy of conspiracy to commit promotional money laundering, like that's a lot for a West Virginia jury to take in when they've never understood what money laundering is before. So I spent a lot of time developing my opening and just putting it into language that um, so like when I said my words, what I used words like dirty money, like you can't do financial transactions with dirty money, and here's what dirty money is. And so like the jury, by the time they got to the end of the case, we had repeated that over and over again. And like you said, like we were telling a story and we were telling the story over and over again. So by the time we got to the end, the jury wasn't bored or confused. And I just did a trial with against a law firm, and an attorney who had a really good reputation. Um, we secured a very nice judgment for our client. Um, and I just couldn't believe during this trial that this other attorney who, like I said, had a very good reputation, but he was constantly losing the jury. He would get up and he would cross-examine our witnesses, and he just didn't have a point or a purpose to his cross examinations. And every time he'd be getting down into these weeds, and within minutes, he would be losing the jury. And I would look over at the jury, and they would just be completely bored or lost. And by the end of the case, I think they actually disliked that attorney because he was doing this over and over again, and there really wasn't a point to it. And I didn't even understand a lot of times what his point was on cross examination. I just can't imagine what a jury who doesn't isn't exposed to law every day what was thinking about that lawyer. So it's very important to be clear and have a purpose anytime you do anything, and make sure you can just advance that clarity every time. I think that's the most important thing, is to be clear with the court and with the jury.
So the cases that you handle as a AUSA are usually high stakes, high profile. I remember being assistant public defender in Cook County, and looking at the types of cases that I imagined were being litigated in the criminal division at the Dirksen Federal Building. I thought, wow, those must be like really intense, high stake cases. How did you go from being a federal law clerk and a private practice attorney who didn't get as much trial experience as you wanted
Hmm.
to being an assistant U.S. attorney and getting over the fear, or did you not have any?
Oh, and I definitely had fear. I am not going to shy away from that. Every every type of hearing that I've done as a AUSA, when I went into it the first time, I was scared it was all going to go haywire. And the only way you really get rid of the fear is by doing it over and over again and getting in there and getting that experience. If your goal is to become an AUSA, you should definitely take advantage of opportunities to get into the courtroom before you get there, just so you have like a comfort level once you get there. But even once you get there and you have that experience, you're still like, if you care about the job, you're still going to be scared. So um, yeah, the only way to get over that is like I said, just to keep at it and keep doing it over and over again until you reach that comfort level. And for me, by the time I had done something like the third time, I felt pretty comfortable doing it.
So one thing that I hear from law students and young lawyers a lot is I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I don't have enough experience. And I actually understand what they're talking about. I know that for the longest time, I thought, oh, I'm not experienced enough to try to apply to become a circuit court judge, or I don't know enough about the law yet to, sit as the neutral and not as one of the party litigants. And I think it actually was Michelle Obama's book where she kind of talked about her experience getting to the White House and meeting all these powerful people and realizing that okay, yeah, there are some really smart ones, but there were some that weren't all
Hmm.
that smart, and she talked about the imposter syndrome, and I
Yeah,
look back and I like self-diagnose myself after the fact. Yeah, I definitely had that. Did you ever experience that?
yeah. I think it, throughout my career, I've experienced that. Yeah, I think I still probably experience it sometimes today. Like I'm in a new situation now, working for a law firm. I not the inexperienced associate anymore. There's an expectation for me to like be able to go into the courtroom and advocate and um, do all these like complicated cases and for me like I've been doing criminal law for the past 7 years. So like now I'm getting assigned civil cases and I'm expected to go into court and know what I'm doing. And I still have those imposter syndrome type of thoughts. Like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm going to embarrass myself. Just self doubt. I think it's part of it. Like you just have to work with it. I definitely had it as an AUSA. I had it as a federal law clerk. You just have to put yourself out there, put yourself into the fire, and you learn like what you're made out of. Yeah.
I have a technique that I've always used, before I give a talk, before I used to try cases, and even, when I go into a hearing setting as an ALJ, and that is to over prepare. Like
Mhm.
I prepare and
Yeah.
prepare and prepare, and even then, the second or two before I open my mouth, I'm just a bundle of nerves.
Mhm.
But it's that over preparation. Once you start speaking, it just flows.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have a technique or techniques that you like to use?
Well, definitely preparation is key, especially when you're working with nerves like that. Like the only way to really kind of calm those nerves before you get into that situation is to prepare. And you should know your file inside and out. Like you shouldn't be in there and not know the answer to a question that a judge asks. And the only way to do that is to prepare like crazy. Um, I, I use different techniques. So a lot of time before a trial starts and I have to do an opening statement and I can feel the butterflies starting to happen. So I'll do like a little I dabble in meditation a little bit and I'll sit at the council table and I'll breathe in. I'll count to five breathing in. But I think the most important part to calm your nerves is to breathe out. If you take long breaths out, that actually like lowers your heart rate and it like lowers your nerves and you start to feel like okay, like I'm starting to feel a little bit less nervous now. I can get up there and make that speech. So there's different techniques, preparation and just being present in the situation and you know recognizing that you have that nervous energy and then using it to your advantage, I think.
So I want to segue into maybe the final part of the like the more meaty stuff of this conversation. The I called this podcast the Purpose, Passion, and Profession because meet so many people, and even my own four kids, that they're like, well, my that's not my passion, Dad, or well, I really want to do X, Mr. Thief, but this is the purpose of my life, and I'm looking for that perfect job that's going to allow me to live out the purpose for which I think God put me on this earth. And I don't poo-poo any of that. I mean, I listen, and I have a point of view on how purpose, your passions, and your profession can be integrated or can be pursued, in different ways at different times. What about you? Like, what do you, think about when you think of, okay, my passion is this, the my underlying purpose is this, and this is how my profession feeds into that.
Yeah, definitely. I've always had a passion for a public service, uh, and it's interesting. Like I never really I always thought it was a mistake to say like, oh, if I get this one job like that I've identified, like that's going to be the be all end all because I guess I've been around long enough to know like even when you do get the thing you're aiming for, there's always going to be something about that job or that dynamic that really doesn't meet your expectations or it disappoints you. Um, so I think that the key really is to have like a broad goal, which for me was like I want to serve the country, I want to serve communities. Ensure being a federal prosecutor is a great way to do that, but if I never get that, then I'll see what else is out there, and maybe I'll find something different that is more fulfilling to me than that. So I think having that broad goal, and then keeping an open mind about what opportunities are available to you to influence that passion. Um, I think I think those are the main things.
No, that's awesome. I think that's a very good way to do it. I think people who can find a career that feeds their passion or builds on their passion and fulfills their life's purpose, they're lucky people.
Mhm.
And they're very fortunate, and we should all be that lucky, but there's other ways to fulfill each of our three things: our purpose, our passion, and then taking care of our families through our careers. And you can do that different ways, like you said. All right, man. Well, that was the important stuff that I wanted to talk about in this podcast. Now, if you look over my shoulder, I placed a hat that you may recognize and may even still revile. I don't know. Are you still an Illini football fan?
I am, especially these days. They're a lot better. I mean, they've lost a couple of games this year, but they're definitely improved from prior years. So it's been more interesting to follow this year.
Yeah, I have in the last 4 years now. I have a son who's a senior there and a daughter who's a freshman there, and it's been difficult for me to wear my emotions about the Illini on my sleeve because I have to be judicious about it. I'm actually going down there on Friday with my wife. It's Dad's weekend, so the Illini are playing Rutgers. I don't know if we're going to go to the game,
It's a
but
good.
yeah, I know Rutgers sucks. So Illinois can
It's a good.
probably pull one off.
It's a good stadium. It's a good vibe. I know you. I know you love going to Iowa games. So it's not going to compare to that. But it's still a fun time.
I'll tell you, I went 4 years ago was the last Illini game that I went to. My son was a freshman, and we actually went to the Iowa Illinois game,
Oh wow.
and Illinois beat us, and it was a close game, but they beat us. And what blew my mind was that the stadium was still they were good that year, and they've been good under Bielema.
Yeah.
They've really improved, but for some reason the culture still hasn't shifted.
Really.
Uh, so even this year, my daughter was telling me that stadium doesn't get it gets relatively full, but
Mhm.
not the jam pack that you see at like other schools
Sure.
like
Yeah.
Iowa.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's just that's exciting. I'm actually excited for the Illini. It's good to see all the Big Ten teams, especially the traditional Big Ten teams, do well. 2-3 in the conference isn't the biggest and greatest thing to brag about, but it's not bad. Are you taking up any teams on the East Coast? Like you've got how far is Morgantown? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, yeah, it's at Morgantown, and so everyone in West Virginia, their teams are the West Virginia football team and the West Virginia sports teams. We don't have a professional team here, so the focus is really on college athletics here in West Virginia. So it's huge, and people are very passionate about it. And I was talking to some friends over the weekend, and they were telling me about the passion and the excitement at the stadium during games. and it sounded really appealing to me. So I'm trying to get someone to give me a ticket, and so I can go up there and see a game up there. But
How far do you live from Morgantown?
oh, it's probably 3 or 4 hours.
Okay, so it's a drive.
Yeah,
Okay. And what are they? The Mountaineers?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
they're not
like.
great this year, but I guess like all their quarterbacks are getting hurt, so they're like on their fifth string quarterback or something like that.
Oh, yeah. No, that's brutal. That's brutal. Um, so you've got the Illini has Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Northwestern. So I don't want to jinx it for you, but you could run the table from here and
Yeah,
still end it. What? Not 9-3. 9-3 is awesome.
that'd be great. That would get us in the bowl in a bowl game, and
In a good bowl game. I mean, you just
yeah,
need to beat one of them to get into a bowl game. But
yeah.
yeah, if you win all four or the majority of those, you're in. And I think I'm not going to talk too much trash because Iowa still has to play Oregon.
Mhm.
Not we have a bye this weekend. Next weekend we'll play Oregon, and then we have to go to Los Angeles to play USC.
That's rough.
So yeah, and then we also have Michigan State and Nebraska. So those are our four games. So I think if we split them, go 2-2 these next four games, that'll be decent. But that will put us behind the Illini in the overall score. So I don't want to talk too much trash just yet.
No, I would love to see the day where we get the Illini and we get Iowa in the Big Ten championship. That would be something to see.
I would like it. I would like it. We would have to make a plan to
Yeah,
meet up in
that's,
Indy for that game.
absolutely. Yeah, I would love that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Man, that I really appreciate you taking the time to chat. I look forward to seeing all the cool things that you're going to do from here. I guess the last thing I want to ask you is I can't believe, based on what I know about you and what I've seen, all the great things you've done, that finishing up in a law firm is where you see yourself.
Mhm.
I have a vision for you doing some other bigger, better things. What do you what what's your vision for the future?
Well, I have sort of like a unrealistic goal of being a federal district judge, but it's amazing how political that is, and I'm not a very political guy, so I don't think that's really in the cards. But yeah, I could see myself someday maybe going back to DOJ and doing something on a management level.
But with the federal judge thing,
Mhm.
I understand that it's super political, but from your point of view, you're going to do the things that you need to do to make yourself
Mhm.
qualified to be a federal judge, and you're going to do the things that you need to do to put yourself in the best position, I imagine, and then you
Absolutely.
let the cards fall where they may, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's all you really can do. Yeah, I mean, you can put your name out there, see what happens. That's all you can really do.
Yeah, that's what I tell my kids all the time. Like, you need to dream big.
Mhm.
Have, like really great aspirations, dream big, and then put in the hard work.
Mhm.
And then if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, you'll probably be pleasantly surprised with whatever you end up with
Yeah.
as, as a quote unquote consolation.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that philosophy.